British Prime Minister Theresa May has invoked Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, formally kicking off the UK's withdrawal from the European Union. The UK now has 2 years to complete what its Brexit secretary calls the most complicated negotiation of all time. But as complicated as the upcoming talks may be, their defining feature is actually quite simple. The EU is the one with the leverage. A little game theory explains why. In the past, the UK has enjoyed a huge amount of leverage in negotiations with the EU because the EU had to reach a compromise if it wanted to get anywhere. So Britain's stubbornness was usually rewarded with concessions. Now that the UK is definitely leaving, however, no deal is an option, so the EU has far less incentive to play ball, a point that European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has stressed publicly. Of course, the EU would rather not go too hard on the UK to limit the economic fallout. But letting a country leave relatively painlessly could be far more damaging, as it could encourage more countries to follow Britain out. British negotiators are still acting like their position is as strong as ever, but the EU is already turning up the pressure. Not only is it delaying the start of negotiations until June, it's also insisting that issues related to exit, like outstanding payments, be negotiated separately from issues related to the broader post-Brexit relationship, like trade and immigration. And these are contentious issues. May knows she can't keep the UK in the single market without allowing the free movement of people from the EU. But she does want to secure the greatest possible access to the single market. With EU leaders poised to be less than accommodating, she might end up sorely disappointed. Even if negotiators do reach a trade agreement, the ratification process alone could take 6 months. That's time the UK doesn't have. So what if negotiators can't reach a deal? Trade ties would probably fall back on WTO rules, with new tariffs and customs checks raising costs for many firms. EU nationals living in the UK and British nationals living in the EU would suddenly be subject to third country immigration rules. Border controls would also be complicated. The UK itself could break up. So let the Brexit game begin. More likely than not, the next 2 years will leave the UK badly outplayed.